Welcome back, everyone. Oz here, and today we're doing some r/PettyRevenge. As per usual, after I narrate the story, I'll be giving you my opinions, and I hope you do so down below in the comments. And without further ado, let's jump right into it. Up in demonium. My act of petty revenge made them send me for a psych evaluation. I grew up in a really fucked up situation. I was diagnosed autistic at a young age. I was adopted and considered a defective product and abused constantly for being so damn weird. At 13, I was given some tests and put into special college courses. My mom beat me for thinking I was better than everyone, so I ran away from home at 14. By 16, I was caught and put in a group home. All the kids in my group home, there were several houses, 2 for boys and 1 for girls, all had to go to the same continuation school. The first day of class, the principal addressed our homeroom and said, "I am here to teach you to speak in complete sentences and use words that have more than 2 syllables." I can't tell you how much that pissed me off. I wanted to tell them to fuck off. How could you just discount all these kids when you know nothing about them? Most of the kids in the class came from situations as bad as mine, or worse. It doesn't make us stupid. However, I was just tired of having to constantly advocate for myself, so I said fuck it, and decided to just act like a total airhead. For an entire quarter, I asked the dumbest questions I could think of in class. I made stupid mistakes. I even talked like an airhead instead of my natural, more autistic diction. Think Brennan from Bones. Honestly, it was fun and so much less pressure than trying to excel academically. Ironically, it made me more popular with the boys. Anyhow, one day we got a creative writing assignment and I was just really inspired. I wrote a parable about a boy who lived in the jungle and befriended an alligator. It was basically an allegory about toxic relationships. I was called into the principal's office for plagiarism. They couldn't believe that I wrote it and wanted to know where I stole it from. I told them they assumed I was an idiot, so I've been acting like one. If they cared to look at any of my transcripts, they would know that I'm not an idiot. They were pissed and thought I was psycho, so the group home made me meet with a psychologist for a day of testing. He said I had an IQ of 152 and borderline personality disorder. Later, the diagnosis would change to autism ADHD with CPTSD. Anyhow, I got to be the first group home kid in Redding, California, to go to public school in 1992. Edit, you guys have been so kind to me. I wanted to add something to my story. Years later, I was in a group called Leadership Redding. We were at a team-building camping trip talking about our experiences with Redding. I talked about being the first group home kid to go to public school. I shared about the outrage, how one teacher even introduced me as the group home kid everyone has been upset about. One of the guys in the group was a police officer. He admitted to being one of the people who wrote letters of outrage to the local newspaper. It really changed his heart when he saw how I turned out all those years later. At the time, I was in a leadership role at age 26 at the very same newspaper that hosted all those angry letters to the editor. I have learned if you walk your life with grace, integrity, and a determination to prove the motherfuckers wrong, you can have an amazing life. Normally, I'm not a fan of bringing IQ into this, but I think this is one of the few circumstances where it might actually be justified. Honestly, I hate people who talk about their high IQ scores and use that as a bragging right or as some kind of air of authority, because honestly, just because you have a high number in a puzzle test doesn't mean you actually have a high IQ when it comes to social intelligence. The last thing you want to be is bragging about your IQ to someone who has a higher IQ than you and doesn't brag about theirs. I used to know a kid in high school who used to brag about his 135 IQ, and he used to piss me off because he acted like he was better than everyone. Oh boy, little did he know. But minus me justifying why one of my pet peeves doesn't need to be activated, I actually really enjoyed this. This was really good. There's not much I can really add to it besides the fact that I'm really happy they're living an extremely positive life, and I hope you all can learn a thing or two from it. Powerful ride. Landlord tried to strong-arm me into letting him into the home. Did not go well. A few years ago, we were in a small 2.5-bedroom apartment. The landlord basically never talked to us. We paid on time and kept everything neat and tidy. Well, one day his lordship decides he wants to sell the place. That's no problem. He wants to give the place a bit of a paint. Also, not a problem. He told us he'd be sanding the walls of the staircase. The main area of the house was upstairs, downstairs had a bedroom, office, and garage attached. And that would be that. Fine, no problem, off you go. But instead of stopping at the top of the stairs, he decided to carry on one of the walls that led into my son's room. Had we known he wanted to do this, we would have done what was necessary, but we didn't know. And so every inch of my son's room, his clothes, carpets, bed, toys, the lot, were covered in a very fine dust from sanding the painted drywall. It took hours of wiping down and vacuuming to get it back, and he had to sleep elsewhere for 2 nights after his breathing and skin suffered. I mentioned this to the property manager, who was an absolute delight to work with, and she said he would advise him that we would need more details about what work he wanted to do. This seemed fine. He then wanted to come back and do some painting. Again, that's not a problem. It's value to the house and looks better, etc. However, he told us he would be there for 4 hours. 8 hours later, he decided that was enough for the day and called it. That night, he messaged me saying he wanted to come back and do more painting the next day. I said that didn't work for us. Wasn't enough notice and didn't allow us peace of living, etc. He then tried to claim that in our contract, the Tennessee contract he called it, it stated that we must allow him to complete projects in a timely fashion, and if we were to decline him entry, then the cost of the rest of the project and its completion would then lie with me and be my responsibility. So I sent his texts, it's always nice when people lie to you in writing, off to lovely property manager again, who called me and said not to worry, she would sort it out. About a week goes by and I get a text asking very nicely if I would allow them access in a few days to complete the work. No problem! His lordship and pal arrived to carry on painting and they were there for another 8 hours. However, this time I don't think they took any pleasure in it. My PC is next to my PS5, so on my PC I put on Tiptoe Through the Tulips on repeat for the full 8 hours, max volume. I just popped my headphones into my controller and gamed all day long. After 8 hours, his lordship comes up the stairs and into the lounge. It's open planned, and said, with great strain and weariness of a man worn down, that they had finally finished. Without breaking eye contact with my screen, I said, "Okay, bye," and he just hovered for a second before shakily walking out. As soon as I heard the front door close, I turned the music off. No doubt it was for you, big boy. Don't lie to people, especially those who, can read a contract. Down below, they linked Tiptoe Through the Tulips with a just in case you aren't familiar. Edit, since it may not be well known, to strong arm someone is to bully or intimidate them. He didn't literally put strong arms on me. Oh, your lordship with your big strong arms, please put them all over me. Who needs AO3 when you have ours' midnight rambles, huh? But in all seriousness, this was handled properly by the tenant. That is, it definitely sucks that they just went ahead and sanded the child's room and didn't give any notice, like, hey, it looks like this room here isn't quite ready for sanding, do you want to maybe take care of this? And just went ahead and did it. That fucking sucks, dog. That was a shitty move on his part. But good on you for just, taking it with your chin held high and taking care of the instance and not making a big deal out of it. Also, I'm really happy the property manager had your back, because that would have been bullshit if they didn't. Joe Crow, 1996. I intentionally gave a cheater wrong answers. So, my first engineering degree was in mechatronics engineering. It was the last semester, and we were in an industrial mechanisms class. The entire time I had gone to college, there were 2 guys that we'll call CJ and Solomon, because that was their real names. They were the most obnoxious and arrogant people you'd ever meet. They were loud, annoying, rude, profane, and just overall terrible people. To top it off, they didn't like me because I usually finished my tests first and got good remarks from my teachers. Well, CJ was kind of an idiot that rode the coattails of his friend Solomon pretty often. Neither were great, but Solomon tried harder than CJ, usually. In this mechanisms class, everyone thought the tests were pretty tough. Lots of formulas, memorization, etc. On top of really long tests in general, in this class, I had been unfortunate enough for CJ to sit beside me all semester. I knew that he had been cheating off of my tests and lab work. I found out later he stole my lab papers and copied some programs I had written. On this test, I decided to let him suffer. On the test, I wrote down the wrong answers everywhere. Everywhere. Answer is true, false. Answer is a 76.8 pound-feet, 55.9 horsepower. I would leave enough right so it wasn't obvious, but I bombed that test. Then I started stretching and checking my answers while doing this. I saw him frantically and casually copying my answers. When he was done, he turned his test in, and I went back and changed all of my answers. When the teacher gave us back our tests, he had bombed it. I still remember the look and shock on his face. He then looked over to my test and saw the grade on it. I then saw him checking his answers and my answers in utter confusion. Then there was a look of realization and he seemed pissed. He never copied my tests again. Hot take, if you have no interest in learning the material or actually learning how to get your degree, then you should not be getting that degree. Especially in fields like computer science, engineering, and medicine, or anything that revolves any form of engineering, honestly. If you can't be bothered to learn the material, you should not be getting that degree because you are actively putting people in danger. It is one thing to understand the concepts but need your old pal Google to pretty much have the formulas on tap. It is another thing entirely to not know how to apply those formulas. This goes for programming as well. And honestly, I can't comment on medicine. That's the one area where I'm gonna step away from and just kind of like, I don't think you can Google anything in regards to medicine while actively being a doctor or a nurse or any kind of practitioner of medicine, honestly. Taxi Cab 88. Don't be dicks to the guy managing your Wi-Fi. My wife and I moved into a basement apartment. The family above us had 4 boys between the ages 4 to 9. We actually enjoyed the occasional pitter-patter from the boys upstairs and their gleeful laughs. Yes, there was the occasional game night that ran late, but we didn't mind. I would constantly be sharing food with them and they would occasionally send some cookies our way. The husband upstairs would constantly solicit my help with IT stuff because he's not a computer guy. Like when their router died and I offered to just replace the routers with my own that I had in storage. Everything was great between us and them, until it wasn't. It's important to note that the wife upstairs was the landlord's daughter. It's also important to note that our rental contract, we were guaranteed in point blank, no uncertain terms that we would get quiet enjoyment after 7 p.m. After a year passed by, the noises upstairs started getting significantly louder. The pitter-patters turned into stomps, crashes, and other loud bang noises. We noticed the parents were gone more often, leaving their 10-year-old kid in charge to babysit the other 3. Our own little baby kept waking up in a panic due to the loud bangs and crashes at all hours of the day and night. We tried diplomacy and asking them to tone down the noise. The more we asked them to keep it down, the more stomping after 7 p.m. The more the wife seemed to retaliate and be rude. We even offered to pay for a contractor to come in and soundproof the flooring, on our dime. Their response was, "My daddy is the landlord, so he'll always take my side. If you don't stop complaining, I'll have my daddy kick you out." We had enough and decided to move. We sold them our barbecue grill since we wouldn't need it where we were going, and most importantly, sold them the routers they needed. They never asked to take over the Wi-Fi account, which is great because I'll occasionally just block devices from working. Your little Wi-Fi toaster isn't working? Probably just a bad toaster. Your iPod isn't connecting to the internet? Maybe you need to restart it, etc. Nothing major like there were computers or TVs because that is too noticeable and would be blamed on the Wi-Fi, not the device itself. If they ever ask for help with it, my standard rates are $100 an hour, with an additional 50% asshole tax. While I approve of the pettiness, I think this might be a crime. Like, don't get me wrong, the upstairs neighbors are definitely assholes in this situation, and certainly need to learn a lesson or two. Like, by all means. Definitely not acceptable, especially pulling rank with the, "Oh, my daddy's the landlord, nya. She's gonna learn sooner or later that her daddy can't protect her from tenant law, and eventually she's gonna start costing him quite a bit of money. It's kind of a shame too, because it started out so wholesome and then it turned really south really fast, and honestly, if there was a noticeable bang after 7 p.m. by the children, then I really do wonder if the wife purposely had the kids be louder after 7 p.m. Hell, the fact alone they were willing to pay for floor soundproofing on their dime is actually pretty incredible, considering the fact that can get really expensive. Like, you gotta pull the flooring up or carpet up and pretty much put down some kind of like mass-loaded vinyl or soundproofing material on the floor. Usually they'll just use a vinyl dampening system and that'll soak up most of the vibrations and noise. The only reason why I looked at doing this is so that way I could actually have soundproofing in my office when I used to have certain roommates. But beyond that, yeah, I think they might be committing a crime, but it is still pretty funny. And when I say crime, I don't mean like they could be arrested. I think it's more of like civil damages. Like it would be something they would need to prove in like a civil court. Jan's Kizma. I've been feeding the fish away from someone's fishing spot. I got a dog and my dog likes to swim. We have a park nearby with a dedicated area for dogs, including a pond. The dog pond, which is connected to other ponds through ditches and the likes. Now, my dog is a bit of a pussy. He won't jump in the deep end. He needs a slope. There's 2 slopes, one on either side of the pond. The pond is about 30 meters across. Could've just called your dog a coward, bro. That was a bit mean. We've been getting our rare days of sunshine for the past weeks, so that means people who fish go fishing. I already judge inflicting pain on animals is a weird hobby, but I don't own the park, so not a lot I can do. Now, there's these 3 old-timers, late 60s, early 70s, who have been fishing in the dog pond for the last 5 years whenever the temperatures get above 25 degrees Celsius. I leash my dog so he won't bother them, tell them good day, walk around, and let him swim on the other side. 5 years. Never been a problem. Last week, Monday, I'm doing the exact same thing. One of them starts shouting, "You can't do that, we're fishing!" First I ignored. Then I shouted back. Then it turned to a verbal altercation where one of them threatened to hook my dog, and I threatened to sink his boat. They have this really cool GPS boat. They did not like that and threatened with physical violence, at which point I de-escalated and went my way. Had a few laughs about it on the way home and didn't think it was too serious. Boomers with attitude. Very next morning, both slopes on the dog pond were littered with fish hooks. Thousands of them, both in the water and the surrounding area. I called the municipality and they cleaned it up the same day. I explained about the altercation, but there's nothing they can do. Called the police, but unless I want to report the physical threats, there's nothing they could do. So then I start reading up on fish species and their habits. And this guy in the store has been schooling me. Now, every night I spend half an hour prepping the best food these fish have ever eaten. Germinating corn, soaking tiger nuts in tuna extract, and making caramel vanilla salmon warm balls. The last ones are particularly tricky because you need the right consistency and they can't have lumps. Took me a few days of testing. So, for about 10 days, I've been making these feeding grounds for different fish species at their favorable spots everywhere in the park but the old men's fishing spot. Hopefully keeping them away. I don't even know if it does anything, and my girlfriend keeps saying, if you'd spend half the time you spend on this on something useful could be done. But I am delighted with myself and will continue to do so until the temperatures drop and I'm already contemplating next year. Too long did it read. Fishing boomers messed up my dog's swimming spot, so now I attempt to lure the fish away from their spot. This gives me a Carl King of Ducks vibes. For those of you who don't know, it's a classic 4chan post that involves a guy feeding the ducks, and the ducks become very protective of the man who feeds them. Personally, I think you should be doing more because they actively put fish hooks down to harm your dog. That's not even just like an act of like accidental stuff. If they purposely and maliciously spread fish hooks down to hurt your animal and other passerbyers and actually probably other dogs who would want to swim in the dog pond while they're fishing in the dog pond, they can go fuck themselves. I really hope it works. I really, really hope it works. It probably won't, but I really hope it works. Honestly, if you really want to put the cherry on top, go out there with all your little caramel balls and all the little treats and snackies for the fish. Go out there while they're fishing and throw it in the pond in front of them and just watch them. Watch them lose their minds as you feed the fish freely. They will not like that. I also wonder if it is marked as a dog pond because if they're fishing in a dog pond and yelling at people for bringing their dogs to the dog pond, ooh. Hypothetically, of course, definitely don't do this, but it'd be really funny if you invested in a naval mine. That might cause a problem with the ATF, but I'm positive the fish will defend you. Hypothetical parallel. Super fussy homebuyers lose out on valuable house supplies because they can't be polite. I just sold my parents' house. I cleared out everything and gave everything a good clean. It had a professional clean when I put it on the market and nobody was living in it since then. It's 2 days post-closing and the new owners blew up the realtor's phone with all the garbage left behind. some crackpot rumors, complaints about some things not working, and the dryness of the yard, and some other baseless issues. First, the stuff left behind was house stuff. Extra hardwood, extra tile, extra light bulbs. The house has some fancy-ass expensive lights. There was also the middle section of the dining room table, which stayed, and the custom paint colors for the interior, exterior, and trim. Everything was custom when my parents built, so the paint has the specific codes. The crackpot rumors were that I left the garage outside for 3 days and drove away saying I don't care. I was back and forth to the place a lot, clearing and cleaning. Stuff I couldn't take or sell I put for free on the road, not garbage, and several days before closing I paid my neighbor to remove it with his trailer. I had said to him, I don't care about this stuff, so if nobody takes it, don't worry about it and just take it to the dump and I'll pay for it. When I did my last inspection and cleaning 2 days before closing, nothing was in the driveway. All garbage had been removed. Anything not working had turned up in the home inspection and the buyers were well aware. Now, they're trying to bill me. As for the dryness of the yard, we live in an arid semi-desert. There's not much I can do about it. The yard hadn't changed much between when it was listed and when it closed. Summers are hot here. Weather has been in the high 30s Celsius, and there was a fire nearby. Even though I don't live nearby, 2 hours away, and have 3 kids, I offered to come help clear up some of their complaints. I made sure I took everything not explicitly stated in the contract. So I took the bulbs, the tiles, the extra flooring, the paint codes. No way in heck they're ever going to match properly. I also took a very expensive barbecue grill that was hooked up to the natural gas. It's a very nice grill, but my current residence doesn't have a natural gas hookup, and honestly, I don't have much interest in barbecuing. But I know the new owners remarked on it, so I thought it'd be nice to leave it for them. The other thing that isn't explicitly stated was a large metal gazebo shading the back patio. It's the perfect size for back there. It was a pain for me to remove, so I thought the new owners would enjoy it, especially since the back patio and enormous back windows face west. In the summer, it gets god-awful hot, and without the patio there, they'll be sweating enough to fill a bathtub. Too long didn't read. New homeowners complained about stuff left behind and other things that didn't matter or that were already revealed in the home inspection, so I went and removed everything, including thousands of dollars of extra tiles and hardwood necessary for repairs, as well as a barbecue and gazebo. The lack of gazebo will make the house and back deck ridiculously hot. Have fun, enjoy your new home. Edit, I should clarify. They were pissed when I removed the hardwood tiles, gazebo, and barbecue. They didn't realize that's what it was initially, and unless they plan on totally repainting as opposed to spot touch-ups, they will miss those paint codes. The biggest PettyRevenge is the barbecue and gazebo, as those were sweet little gifts I know they wanted. The gazebo especially is the only thing keeping the entire house from being an oven in the summer. Honestly, this one fits in more with malicious compliance than anything else, because they asked him to remove the stuff, and he did. He had no obligation to do so, especially because a lot of those things are a godsend to homeowners if they appear in the house, like additional tiles, hardwood floor, and paint. I mean, hell, if they're moving in and hiring movers, or even if they're doing it themselves and have heavy objects that could damage the wall, they're really gonna miss those paint codes. I'm honestly surprised they just watched him take the gazebo and grill, because I really do wonder if they had fully realized what they had asked him to do, or just wanted the quote-unquote trash, the paint, tiles, hardwood floor, light bulbs, etc. to be removed, but still wanted the gazebo and the grill, which honestly, that's just frustrating. Zany Chunk, arrogant interviewee. A pretty senior global functioning head role. After tracking him down, I set up a video call with a potential candidate. He was located in a different country, but was the same nationality as me. After a pleasant enough opening 10 minutes, he started laying down the law. I expect a significantly larger remuneration package, and I expect your client to pay for me to in full relocate, etc., etc. I decided this wasn't the person that was going to be moving forward for the role for which I was recruiting, not least because he had done zero research on my client. Always a really bad sign. I wanted to show enough professional respect and stuck on the call for another 15 minutes. He took this opportunity to bury himself deeper into my bad books. He then rambled on about having back-to-back video calls all day and that he was glad I was his last call. It was then that I told him, look, you seem like a pretty talented person, but I'm not taking you forward for this role. I have a number of equally well-qualified candidates who are taking this role more seriously, so I can't risk putting you in front of my client when your motivation seems to be focused on remuneration rather than an opportunity with a great company. He was crestfallen. I think he realized that he was cocky and had overplayed his hand and mucked it up. He started backtracking, trying to be a little bit more humble, but I pulled him up with my petty revenge. I said to him, "I can see what you're doing here, and I understand, but it's too late at this point. Sorry. And also, if I'm your last call for today, I certainly hope you at least had underpants on for all your previous calls." I went on to tell him that his camera was angled towards a mirror in his hotel room, although he was wearing a business shirt which covered his backside. When he leaned forward, you could clearly see he was wearing no underpants or trousers. He quickly apologized and disconnected, then emailed me another very groveling apology days later, which I graciously accepted. That was about a year ago, and I've not heard a thing from him since. I've never shared his name with anyone else, and I would never do that. Nevertheless, I suspect he was a damn sight more humble after that call than when he started out. Arrogant. Honestly, if you ever find yourself in an interview position where you have specific things that have to be met, don't open them up as demands, but rather as questions. So as an example, instead of saying that you expect your client to do this, this, and this so I can relocate, you would want to open instead with something along the lines of, "I have concerns regarding my current place of residence. Is there anything the company would be willing to provide or assist with in regards to me moving location?" Now, of course, not as vague as I put it, but pose it as a question, not as a demand. It'll get you further. As another note as well, even if your resume is 110% there, if you have a piss-poor attitude, they're probably going to go with the 90%er instead. Nowadays, companies are far less interested in hiring savants with glowing accolades and instead looking for someone who can actually be a team player. Because, as they've been finding out, 1, less HR problems, and 2, having a functioning team is far better than having a goober savant. Plus, if you're going to be an ass to the interviewer, there's a solid chance you're going to be an ass to both clients as well as other employees within the company. Now, honestly, I haven't done an interview in probably 5 years, and it probably shows. So, for those of you who have been, in an interview or are an interviewer, if you have any tips in the comments to share, that could be really appreciated because I'm sure someone could learn quite a bit from that. Hey, welcome to the outro. Don't forget this whole thing is basically brought to you by GamerSupps. If you like caffeine, then I can't recommend GamerSupps enough. Use code Oz at checkout to support the channel. And I do actually use this product. It's replaced all other sources of caffeine for me because I feel good. It doesn't have any of that extra stuff that a pre-workout blend might have. It's with a couple of the extra things to make it so you don't crash as hard. It's good. I like it. Personally, if you really want a good flavor, try the Soda Pressing Pear or even the Dragon Fruit Punch. Those two are my personal favorites right now.